Hello my friends, I'm Rich Larson and I'm the IRC Tire Guy. Today we have a breakdown of one of the most highly requested and questioned techniques. Today we're talking the coveted slow wheelie. But there is a caveat to the specifics of what we're talking about. Now we've done breakdowns including a wheelie hack. That's a great first step to your slow wheelie skill. As well as a slow wheelie breakdown on a small bore bike. That's a great way to build confidence for the full-size machine. Because you can never have enough wheelie content, today we talk how to wheelie straight, or what you need to do when you get that front tire into the air. Now quickly, we have to make sure we go over the basics of getting that front tire up. I'm sure you've seen our multiple breakdowns of the clutch up. This technique is a key exercise in your front wheel lift control. We're using the same compression and rebound as well as throttle and clutch control to find an efficient lift when attempting a slow wheelie. The goal with a slow controlled sit-down wheelie is a consistent controlled lift of the front tire. There are a few changes in our lift approach while in a seated position. Now riding forward at a steady controlled pace, we already have our first tip to assist you in that straight line control when wheeling. Before we initiate our lift, we need to make sure we're in a centered, balanced position as we roll forward. It's important to understand if you don't have complete balance and you're fighting your balance before you even initiate your lift, we're already putting ourselves at a disadvantage. Make sure your pace moving forward is steady enough to hold a controlled, balanced position. Now, when we talk about pace, we always get questions on what gear is recommended. Most of the time, I do this in first gear, depending on the bike's gearing. It's important to understand efficient traction and control of RPM at slow speed is done with low RPM. So before we initiate lift of the front wheel, the machine shouldn't be at the top of the RPM. If this is the case, we may need to shift to second. Again, I can't tell you what gear you need to be in because we probably don't have the same gearing, or for that matter, we probably aren't on the same bike. With that being said, it should sound something like this. So let's get into the seated lift technique. Once we find that low RPM, steady, balanced pace, the goal is always efficiency. We shouldn't be yanking on the bars or using excessive strength to lift the front end. Control of our machine during a slow wheelie, or for that matter, any situation, doesn't come from strength. It comes from a proper timing of movement and power delivery together. So timing is key for an efficient lift. The first piece of the timing puzzle is finding the front suspension compression and rebound. Now, we can use all front brake or a mixture of front and rear. It's great to practice both ways, although because we're getting that front tire up, it's good to get used to covering the rear brake in this situation. As you can see, I'm in a centered, slightly forward position on the machine. I focus on a straight posture and a strong core with my torso. My knees are directly above my toes in that seated position. Now, using a quick stab of the front and rear brake to initiate suspension compression, notice my body position. I allow the front end to drop as I almost extend back away from the handlebars. Simultaneously, the clutch is pulled in and I load the engine. Now, because I'm seated, I hold my upper body back. I almost lift my head up and stick my chest out as the suspension compression is maximized. The preemptive movement back initiates the lift of the front tire and loads my weight over the rear tire for traction. My front suspension rebound is also timed with the release of the clutch and reduction of throttle for even more efficient traction. The goal here is consistent traction during the lift. This will assist with that straight up and down balance. Spinning your rear tire on lift really affects your balance control. Now, as the front tire comes up, avoid collapsing into the bars. This is probably one of the most common mistakes I see riders make when wheeling. As the front tire comes up, they almost pull on the handlebars, bending their elbows and bringing their chest close to the handlebars. This actually causes a smaller zone of balance because the weight in our torso is closer to the actual machine. The smaller the balance point or closer your torso gets to the bars, the more straight up and down you need to get the bike itself to find the balance zone. This is a very counterintuitive feeling, but during a slow wheelie, your arms should almost be fully extended back, the chest as far away from the bars as possible. We're using our body as a counterweight, which actually widens and lowers the balance point of the machine. This naturally makes your front tire lower or closer to the ground, which is much safer. The wider the balance point is, the easier balance will be on both axes, straight up and down, as well as left to right. Again, the goal is to be in a balanced position before we even begin the wheelie. Notice how I maintain this balanced position during the initiation of the wheelie. An important part of maintaining a balanced left to right axis during the front wheel lift is to avoid gripping with your knees. You can see the micro adjustments from left to right with my knees as counterbalance. This is a straightforward understanding I'm sure most of you can put together, but there is much more to be said about how our own input into the machine affects the straight line balance of your wheelie. As I said, I use my knees to help counterbalance the machine's left to right axis. As I fall to the left, I bring my right knee out. As I fall to the right, I bring my left knee out. Although there is an extremely important distinction that's often overlooked. When you bring one or the other of your knees out for counterweight, the natural tendency for an extreme correction is to take your foot off as well. I recommend trying to avoid this impulse. There's a reason for this. Imagine your machine is falling to the right. As this happens, the natural impulse to counterbalance with your left foot off the peg adversely creates more weight on your right peg and right side, which is the direction your bike is already falling. Now, to an extent, counterbalancing with your opposing foot will work, but I've actually found more straight line control with opposing peg weight. This actually transfers heavily to our understanding of balance when we switch from a seated to standing position on the machine during a wheelie. Once we are off the seat, the only place weighting the machine are our feet on the pegs. A great way to find out which peg you're weighting more is change from a seated to standing position during your slow wheelie. This is a challenging practice, but the balance in your wheelie control will actually transfer to your balance in technical situations. Now, we'll be doing an in-depth video on proper peg weight and balance in technical situations soon on this channel. Getting your wheelie skill dialed now is a great place to start. Now, on top of that, we can also focus on where we are in line with our bike when that front tire is in the air. Now, I've noticed I naturally pull to the left when in a wheelie. Notice where my position on the machine is. The front tire is slightly turned to the left. Just about every time I wheelie, my upper body and torso shift to the left, creating more weight on the left side and pulling me to the left side. Where you naturally ride while in a wheelie is important to be aware of. The ability to adjust this position is required for your balance on the left and right axis. A great way to practice this adjustment is attempting to change the side of the bike you look past during your wheelie. When your bike is in that balance point, you have to peer to one side or the other. Again, naturally, I look past the left side of the bike. If you're struggling with your straight line balance, try looking past the opposite side of the machine and notice the effects. The ability to make these adjustments will transfer to your ability to wheelie straight. Lastly, this might be one of the most important tips for your straight line control. For slow wheelies, your rear tire is extremely important. A lot of riders run gummy tires, including myself. Mini gummy tires have an extremely soft carcass. The softer the carcass, the more the tire will roll under weight. As an example, a slow wheelie with an IX09W Gakota is much harder than a slow wheelie with a JX8 Gakota, and even easier with a VE33S Gakota. From softest to hardest in gummy compounds affects the ease of control during a wheelie. If you feel none of these previous tips work, Try a different tire setup. Harder carcasses, compounds, maybe more air or harder mousses. Advantages are welcomed and almost required when learning a new technique. I hope my tips on wheelies help you and your dragging rear fender in the future. If you're enjoying the channel, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as well as follow us on Instagram at IRC Moto and my personal Instagram page at RichLarson511. And until next time, keep shredding.